it's Cece, and today I am here to do a spoiler-free review. So the book that I'm going to be reviewing and not spoiling at all for you today is Not Your Sidekick by C.V. Lee. This is an arc that was sent to me by the publisher, but this is an honest review, and starting right off before we get into the summary, I adored this book and I'm so excited to talk about it. It comes out on September 8th, so please keep your eye out. So this book follows a girl named Jessica Tran, and it takes place in a future world wherein superpowers have become somewhat normal. Some kind of event happened, there was a solar flare, and now they call people with superpowers metahumans, and there are kind of a lot of them. And Jessica's parents are two of the big heroes in her town in particular. And so she assumes that because they are heroes, she will also have superpowers, but the time has come and gone and she's kind of resigned herself to a life without powers. So she's trying to get a job, and she winds up finding a paid internship. And when she turns up, she finds out that the internship is actually for her town's villain. But she decides to go for it anyway because it is a paid internship. It's gonna look great on a resume, plus her crush, Abby, is there. There is, of course, much more going on than that. A mystery is suddenly revealed, but that is kind of what you get when you start reading this story. So let me talk more about all of my feelings about it. The setting in this book was just so well done. I was a little tentative about the future setting because I think it can either be done really well or really poorly, but I think that this setting established itself so well, and what was wonderful was that the world kept building throughout the book. You would get these little hints and peeks, and none of it ever felt like info dumping. It felt like a natural progression of learning more about the world and the characters and the way that everyone fit inside this world. And I thought it was especially interesting how the world had evolved not only to accept superhumans, but also how it kind of went back to how we treat superheroes, and that there are comics, but now they are comics of real fights that actually happened. And they talk about all these superheroes all the time as though they are celebrities, because they are, and I thought that was really awesome. Another thing that was really interesting about the setting of this book is that it was made up of mainly an Asian cast, mainly first, second generation immigrants, because as it says, there was a solar flare in what was the southeastern Asian region, and so a lot of immigrants came over to where this book takes place, which is in the Nevada area. The lead character is Vietnamese, but there is a scene where she goes to an older part of town to order food because they have really great Vietnamese food, and she just talks about seeing all of the cultures around her and everyone speaking in Vietnamese and Japanese and Malay and Thai, and she just kind of appreciates that culture that has grown into this area because it is an area of immigrants. Jessica's relationship with her culture and with her heritage was fascinating, and I can't wait to see more of that as this moves forward because it seems as though this is going to be a trilogy, and so I'm really excited to learn more about that aspect of her life, but I loved the ways in which it was addressed in this book. This book, I would say, is incredibly reminiscent of stuff like Sky High and Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog, in that it takes these superhero tropes, but it has fun with them. It flips the genre on its head and makes it something new. But this book, unlike either of those things, flips that on its head even more, and it lets a bisexual Vietnamese girl take the leading role, and the romance that is the leading romance is between two women, and that was incredible. This book was almost unbearably fun. There were so many scenes that I read that I was grinning from ear to ear. It took itself seriously, but it also had so much fun with the tropes of the superhero genre, and it was just so enjoyable to read. Jessica as a main character is someone I really, really loved. I think it feels like at the beginning you were going to be getting a heroine that you've seen before, sort of upset with her place in the world. She feels overshadowed by her siblings. She has a desire for more, and initially I was worried that that was something that I had seen so many times before, but she was developed so fully as a person, and she was confident in herself at times while also being really self-conscious at other moments, and the ways that all of that worked together made her such a wonderful character to read about. I just adored it. And I would say that that goes for the side characters as well in terms of strengths. I think any of the side characters could have carried their own story, which is what books should strive for, honestly, but so many of the characters were all written with such care, and I loved reading about them just as much as I loved reading about Jessica. In fact, as it went on, I kind of started to see their relationship with her friends and her crush and the way that all worked together. It sort of reminded me of the way that, like, the Scoobies in Buffy get along. They just very much had that kind of dynamic group-wise. I really feel like that's a good comparison for their group dynamic. Something that I thought was awesome in this book is that it takes place in the future, so coming out was still like a thing. There was just a side moment where Jessica mentions that she accidentally came out as bisexual a few years ago in school, and it was kind of like people reacted, but she didn't get any hate for it. I really appreciated how it treated a future world in which sexualities and gender identity wouldn't be as big a deal. Jess has two best friends, and one of them is a trans boy named Bells, and Bells' introduction was done incredibly well. There was a side mention of a binder, and then every now and then you would get mentions of asking if he felt gender dysphoria or if he was comfortable with certain situations, and that was so well done. I just appreciated that there was no apparent homophobia or transphobia in this world that takes place so far in the future that, like, superpowers, metahumans exist, so it wouldn't make sense for people really to be judged by sexuality or gender identity anymore. Also, as far as Bells as a character, it was really cool because it led to an awareness from other characters about asking, like, pronoun usage. There's a specific scene where Jess meets someone new and they are in a suit, so you can't really see how they would identify, and she goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, my friend Bells would kill me if I had waited this long to ask, what are your preferred pronouns?" And then that comes up again later. And the inclusion of just normally asking a person's preferred pronouns. It was just such a simple thing to do, but it was done so well. The romance between Jess and Abby was adorable. It could have been slightly more developed, but I'm leaving room for that in future books. In this, it was just really cute. It was just kind of them tiptoeing around each other and Jess really liking Abby but not being sure if she liked girls, so she didn't want to make her uncomfortable, and it was just so sweet. Jess did not have YA absentee parents. You know, a lot of YA books, the parents are just kind of gone so that kids have an excuse to go on adventures, and there is a little bit of it more at the beginning, but her parents are really present throughout her life. They make sure to ask questions, they make sure to be involved, and parents are really involved from beginning to end, so that was appreciated. This book was predictable, but I think it was intentionally predictable because it worked with the tropes of the superhero genre, and it embraced them, and so that made some elements predictable, but it's just there to have fun. Like, you know what's gonna happen in a superhero story, so yeah. But some elements were not predictable, and I really appreciated those as well. My only real issue with this book was pacing. I think that it had a slight pacing problem. At the beginning, I think it took a little too long to get to the meat of the story, why I was reading this book, and then at the end, after the climax, there is just this sort of odd time that felt a little bit off, and those two things kind of bothered me, but it was in no way enough to detract from how much I adored this story. Like, I immediately wanted book 2. I closed it and I was like, where's book 2? This book isn't even out yet, and I want book 2. This is what happens when you get advanced copies of books. Pain happens. I just feel like this was such a step forward for queer books, for queer lit. It wasn't Queer 101, it wasn't coming out and learning how to be gay and a superhero. It was just another part of her identity. The entire cast of characters was so diverse and wonderful, and it just felt like such a move forward. Oh, and I can't believe I forgot to say this at the top of the video, but this book is own voices as hell. She is bisexual and she is a first-generation Asian immigrant, and both of those things are reflected so well in here. This was just so incredibly well done. I gave it 4.5 stars out of 5 when I finished it, and I am eagerly awaiting more from these characters and from this world. Okay guys, there you go. That is my review of Not Your Sidekick by C.B. Lee. Like I said, this book comes out on September 8th, and I highly encourage you to go and pick up a copy. I think it was just amazing, and I cannot wait for more people to read it so I can discuss it with everyone. If you have read it, if you watched this after the release date and you loved it, please tell me. I'd love to talk about it. Tweet me, whatever. It was so good, and I want to talk more about it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!